Okay, let's begin. So welcome to Introduction to UI UX in Figma. So these are your speakers. I'm Irhan. I'm your average penguin enthusiast.
I'm Brayden. Play too much CS2.
And I'm Shenxing, and I do everything under the sun.
Cool. Basically today we're gonna start off with an introduction to UI, an introduction to UX, a UX demo, a Figma demo, and then a game to wrap everything up. Okay, so first of all, what is UI, right? So it's basically just how a user interacts with an application or a website. So that might include using visual and audio elements such as type fonts, icons, buttons, and animations to enable a user to have a smoother experience interfacing with whatever your product has to offer. Yeah. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce some design concepts to all of you, and I think this is key to actually making a good UI. And although some may not choose to start off with margins, I think this is probably one of the most common mistakes I see in beginners trying to make a good UI. Feel free to take a seat. Yeah. So basically, the definition of margins is just the space around your design elements, such as things like text, images. Yeah, all of these are design elements. And the importance of having good margins is to prevent your designs from feeling cluttered and cramped. Now, this is very important because whatever your user sees in your front end is going to be their first impression, right? And no matter how well done your backend is, the moment your UI starts to feel unprofessional, the user might start feeling skeptical about what your entire product has to offer, no matter how well done your backend is. Yeah. Okay, so let's think of designing a UI much like reading a newspaper article, right? In newspaper articles, you have paragraphs in order to group similar information into sizable bite-sized chunks for you to digest. It's the same thing in UI in the sense that you want to group similar elements together such to create a kind of like a sense of relation, yeah, and to create hierarchy. So hierarchy is basically just which elements deserve the most attention from you, which ones have the highest hierarchy. And the study of hierarchy is how to create that sense of importance in between different elements that distinguish that sense of distinctness. Yeah. And sometimes we might think that varying spacings, for example, may I guide your attention to this example on the left? Over here, this is a classic arrangement of a message, right? One message in, let's say, a messaging app like Discord. You have your photo here, you have your username here, and then you also have your message over here. So by grouping these elements close enough together, you find that, okay, I know that these three belong to is information from one message. And you might not say, for example, some following message here might be from this person, this username. Yeah. But what I want to tell you is that instead of grouping everything so closely together in order to create a sense of hierarchy, you can also vary spacings proportionally in order to do that. Okay, yeah, what I mean is, look at the example on the right, please. Wait, yeah, right. Um, okay, so over here, I'm grouping information about a loan to someone. Okay, this is a loan tracking app. And so first of all, the thing that probably grabs your attention the most, or yeah, would be the person one because we read from left to right, and this is the biggest on the left. Yeah, so notice how number one, I make the font size of person one bigger. I bolden it, and then in terms of spacing, the spacing over here, if you can see, wait, let me just zoom in. Yeah, the spacing. Oh, yeah, the spacing over here is bigger than the spacing over here. It might be a minute change, but this is also a way how you can create grouping without making things feel too cramped. Okay? Yeah, all right. Um, okay. By the way, if you have any questions, you can just ask like straight away. That goes for the online folks as well. Okay. So the next thing that I want to cover is something more general, layout. Okay. So I don't think there's a very concrete way. I can't tell you, for example, oh, you're doing this app, this like mailing app or something like that. And I can tell you exactly, according to this rule book, how you're going to precisely lay out every single element. But what I can teach you is some considerations in every single layout. Okay. And this is something that is very applicable to everything. And yeah, first of all, let's start off with considering the platform of the user. When you're designing a product, like your user might access it from many different platforms. Um, for example, it might be a website, in which case, like all these example platforms, phone, iPad, laptops, these are all possible options in which they can access your product. But even if you're just, let's say, designing something as specific as an Android app, right? Android, there are many different kinds of Android screen sizes, and you need to consider for all of them if you have the time. And if you don't, which is common among student developers like yourself, what we need to do is to consider the needs and purposes of your audience. Let's say you're designing a website, okay? A diary website. If you a diary writing website, yeah. So if you try and think from the perspective of your user, and if you market your product in a sense where this diary tracking app might just be something like the purpose of it is just to provide a platform for you to jot down a few of your thoughts, your reflections just before bed, right? So something a bit more casual rather than offering long chunks of writing actual paragraphs for your diary. Then maybe your user might be more inclined to access it from a more personal device and a more portable device like your phone, right? Because you're writing it right before going to bed, as opposed to rather like booting up your entire laptop setup just to write a paragraph or two. So yeah, in that sense, if you think along that line, you would know to optimize more for, let's say, a phone layout rather than a laptop layout. Yeah. Um, so another point about considering needs and purposes is that sometimes when you prototype, you want to think about this thing called a user flow. And a user flow is just basically a simulation, kind of a process of what kind of buttons your users would click when they access your app, from the moment they start to when they accomplish a certain objective. So for example, if you have a weather app, right, the two user flows might be you enter the app and then you check the weather, or you enter the app and then you search for a city and then you check the weather. These are two different user flows. And what you want to consider when designing your app is which user flows are going to be used the most amongst your users. So going back to the example of the weather app I just mentioned, your users might be more inclined, slightly more frequently check the weather of their current location, right? So you might want to have that as a more prominent, take up a more prominent space on your homepage rather than the search bar, yeah, which is the second user flow that I mentioned just now. So the idea here is basically that you have a limited amount of space on each screen, and you want to optimize how much space to allocate to each element to make that space be meaningful and value add to the experience of the user. Yeah, okay. So one tip that I want to mention is that there are always different ways to implement one single feature. For example, let's just say the deleting button, right? iOS users would know that this particular menu is called the context menu. And this is a neat way where you can hide your delete button, right? You press and hold a certain list item, and this menu shows up for you to delete something. And there's also another way to implement the delete feature, which is over here. You can swipe on a list item in order to unveil some other button. So these are some very neat little ways for you to hide functionality, even common functionality like deleting, such that they don't need to take up a space immediately on your user screen and can instead be displayed reactively to a particular gesture that the user does. Okay, so basically point is just go Google how to implement any feature and see if there are other ways that might help you save space. Yeah. Okay, so next up, we also have color. Yeah, so I mean, you might think of color as something as superficial as like evoking emotions, I suppose. Like, does anyone want to contribute what any of these colors kind of evoke in you? Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yes. For which color? Oh, okay. I mean, that works as well. I mean, okay, you see, right? To some of you, his answers may seem like he's trolling or nonsensical. And that's kind of a point, okay? Okay, thank you. I respect your inputs. Yes, okay. Um, but the point is that many of you might have different opinions on what um mood each color evokes, and that's fine. But there are certain things to note about common conventions when using each color. Okay, so for example, when you are using red, you wouldn't normally use it as the main color scheme for your entire app because, for example, a red button might denote a warning or an irreversible action that you're about to undertake, right? So it evokes that kind of I guess alertness in you. So yeah, and the reason why you wouldn't make it part of your main color scheme is because of this thing called accent colors. Yes, this is cool. So basically, an accent color is one particular color within your color palette that you decide, okay, this color is going to be more important than the others. All colors are the same, but some are more equal than others. Yeah, and so basically the functionality of accent colors is really to highlight buttons, for example. And so if you consistently apply this particular color that of your choosing to all the clickable buttons in your app, right? Um, as your user uses your app, he or she will learn subconsciously that every time I see an element, a rectangle, a circle with this particular color, maybe you might want to add a bit of drop shadow on it as well. They will know that this is a clickable button, and sometimes this might pose more of more troublesome of a matter than you might think. Um, because just look at this, okay? So you really need to let your users know what is a clickable button to have a smoother app experience. So for example, over here, you see that the accent color is green, right? So your book grab panda, even without reading the fine text, even without knowing that this is commonly what a button text might say, your user might instinctively think that this is a button, and that smoothens up your user experience by a lot. In contrast, look at this one on the right. Over here, if you don't have a consistent color scheme and a consistent design language, your user might be confused at first glance, at least. So yeah. Okay, and also, like I mentioned earlier on, it's important to use consistent colors in order to create a visual identity. Yeah, just look at like Google. If you look at how their logos are all very geometric, they're all very simple, and they all have the same four colors, right? You will know on first glance that what you're looking at is basically a Google product. So yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. So I just want to mention something about color harmonies. So this goes into the territory of color theory, and I don't want to elaborate too much on that, but yeah, just a side note that if you want to create nice color palettes, if any of you do visual design before this, you know to go to this website called coolers.co. They have a color palette generator that's very useful. Don't worry, I'll link all of these resources in a slide at the back. Yeah, so these are all the different kinds of color harmonies you have. But I just want to like point out this particular example. Okay, so sometimes, yeah, color harmonies basically just point to like different colors that you might use as a color palette. But even within these colors of your color palette, it's important to still have a sense of consistency. So for example, over here in this example, you see that these attractions, right, they are meant to be like a quick summary of attractions, and you can, for example, click into them in order to learn more about each of these attractions. And because of that, they are basically similar in terms of functionality, right? It's all the same system of you clicking inside to learn more, and they're all categorized under attractions. So in this case, because they're all kind of the same form of element, you want to try and keep a more consistent color palette in terms of, for example, the background color that you might choose. You see, even though these are opposite colors, it's a bit jarring to see them side by side, even though they form the same functionality. So this is a good example of color being an important part of your design language. Yeah. Okay, so we can't talk about color without talking about gradients. Yep, so gradients are a very dangerous thing, and when done well, they can look very elegant, modern, and professional. Or they can also look like a tie-dye shirt done by a 3-year-old toddler who doodles on walls, such as this gradient in the back. Yeah, so I mean, gradients are dangerous, and so there are some guidelines that you should always follow when choosing colors for your gradients. So first of all, don't add too many colors unless you want it to always look like a rainbow. Unless it's Pride Month, then I guess it's okay. But yeah, so you might want to choose neighboring colors on the color wheel. So I've included a helpful photo of the color wheel over there. And yeah, so if let's say because of your branding, right, you want to choose, or you need to choose opposite colors on the color wheel. In that case, for example, I need yellow and purple over here, right? It's a good idea to add a transition color into your gradient. So for example, because they're on directly opposite sides, your gradient generation software might choose to go this way, to gradient this way, or to gradient this way, right? So it's a good idea to specify which transition color you want. For example, I think blue is a good idea in this case. So yeah. And for your gradient to not look so jarring, I think it's always a good idea to look for inspiration in nature, because that signifies some of the more natural color schemes that we're used to looking at. So yeah, the obvious ones are just like the color palette of like sunset, sunrise, but you can also actually look at the color palettes of colorful birds. It kind of works if you find the right birds. Yeah, so that's one. And because gradient sometimes might be polarizing in terms of opinions, yeah, you should always get an objective opinion on it. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're approaching the end of this. Just a quick note on contrast. It's important to have good contrast, to have good readability. I mean, this is kind of a common sense point. But other than that, contrast can also be used to create content hierarchies. So we go back to the idea of hierarchies from earlier on. For example, we see over here, this set of title and subtitle clearly has better contrast than this. And it might just be a more minute change. And sure, this also works basically just as good in most scenarios. But it's these kind of little details that kind of exemplify how good of a UI designer you are. Yeah. So basically, this is just less bolden. It has less weight to its font, and it's more grayed out. And also, contrast can be very useful in sectioning and grouping content. So sometimes when you have, let's say, an iPad app, and you have something that's a bit more landscape form like this, if you want to if you keep on using like lines to section off different parts of your screen, it looks, I mean, it's fine, but it's not very elegant. There are better ways to do this, okay? And yeah, a good way is just to use contrast. So you see over here, can you guys see? Wait, let me zoom in. Yeah. So I realize that this projector doesn't really have good colors, but if you can notice, right, this section over here and this section over here is a bit more grayed out than the middle section over here. So that's also a way where you can section and group content. Sorry for the typo. I just realized selection. My bad. Yeah, so also a quick tip. So in, let's say, website designs, especially on the landing page, you might sometimes see text overlaid on images, and this is a very common thing. But what if you have an image that's a bit weird, like this photo of Greenland over here, okay? In the bottom left-hand corner where you want to put the text, everything's a bit kind of like, it's a mess of colors, right? So if you put this text as white, it looks kind of weird. If you put this text as black, it looks kind of weird. So what we can do in this case is to lower down the brightness of the image behind in order to further accentuate your text. And you see that you can still see majority of the features in the image, and it kind of achieves the same effect, but just with higher contrast and readability. Yeah. Okay, so next we also have typography. For typography, I think it's kind of a very simple section about yeah, just stick to one or two fonts in general. I suggest like one font, a fancier font, maybe a handwriting font, some of you like that, for our titles and things that are made to pop out, but it's not really made for long durations of reading. And you also have a more readable font for paragraph text. I think these two, for all intents and purposes, is enough. And so you might ask, if I need to stick to one or two fonts, how do I create variation? Yeah. So in order to create variation or emphasis, right, you can change your basic like options in, I don't know, Google Docs. You see these boldening, underlining, italics all the time, right? But one thing that I want to point out is that the most commonly used method to create emphasis and variance is to change font weights. And the reason for this is because when you add underline to a text, unless you've made it very clear through repeated iterations of underlining means emphasis, when you see an underline under a text in, let's say, a website, your first instinct might be that this is a clickable link to another external site, right? So for that reason, typically we avoid adding underlines. Or if you want to add underlines, maybe choose like a zigzag line or something like that. Yeah, something a bit unconventional. And italics is also less used because, it's just a bit less, it sticks out a bit less than changing font weights. Yeah, by the way, changing font weights just means changing how thick your letters are. Yeah, so you can, in design software such as Figma, which you will see later on, you can actually not only bolden your text, but you can also lighten it depending on which font you're using. Yeah. So here's a typography case study. First of all, yeah, for the title font, remember what I said about creating contrast, right? Although yes, let me zoom in a bit. Although yes, this top part and this bottom body text, they do have different font sizes, but yeah, it's not very distinguishable, I suppose. And it would be better to make this, to increase the font weight of this title text over here. And additionally, one second. Yeah. So your username, right? Sometimes when you're in a messaging app, and you're used to texting someone, you might be more inclined to recognize them based on their profile pictures rather than reading their actual usernames. Yeah, I don't know if you guys had the experience, but sometimes when my friends change their profile pictures, I don't really like recognize that it's them texting me at the first moment. So yeah. Basically, point is that the username doesn't have to be the same size as the text. And if you want, you can even change the color of this text to be a bit more grayed out in order to create more contrast, and in order for your users' attention to be directed immediately to the content of your message rather than spending time reading the username of that message. Yeah. Okay, that's it for my part. I'm gonna pass the time over to Xingxin.
So for the next part, I'll be moving on to user experience and why it's crucial in playing a part in understanding our users' needs. And because it's user experience, we want to get your experience. So we will be having a lot of interaction in this session. And if you're not really comfortable with talking in person, we also have a Mentimeter, but the downside is we only have a limit of 50 people at a time. So first come, first serve. I'll leave this on for around 1 to 2 minutes if you want to log in.
Wait 1 second.
No worries.
So stand in the middle so that the camera can see.
Oh,
Wait, I think I turned on the camera. Did I turn on the camera?
oh, shit. Oh,
Wait, let me minimize it. I'm gonna click until there's a haptic feedback. Yeah.
oh. Okay, I think most of the people are logged in already, so I'll continue. So starting off, oh, sorry, I'll try to get the volume to be lowered a bit. Okay, starting off, what is user experience? In simplified terms, is basically just understanding your users, and it can be answered in the next 5 questions. So firstly, what problem are you solving for your user? Next, what are the users' goal? Like, what do they want out of this application that you're making for them? What do users know and don't know? This might sound a little bit complex, but I'll get into more details later. How do users navigate your app from the start to the end? Like, is there a button to transition from the home screen to, for example, your profile page? And lastly, how do users interact with your site? For example, buttons, etc. Starting off, you might be wondering, how is UX and UI different? So UI focuses more on the design aspect where it puts more emphasis on the buttons, the layouts, etc. While UX, we focus more on the flow of the app and how we can better suit our users' needs. So some of y'all have already answered on the Mentimeter. Currently, we have an example between YouTube and Netflix. They might look a bit similar based on their design, but they're actually really different. So I'll be moving on to the difference on the Mentimeter, and y'all can answer, and I'll pick up some good responses. Oh yeah, we will not be sharing your response. It's just for me to get a better gauge of the audience. And also in person, if you want to respond, that will be very appreciated. Okay, I've seen quite a few good responses already, so I'll get moving to the answers. So firstly, they are similar in the aspect that they both provide entertainment for our users. They also help to filter content, for example, through your search bar. Like example, if you want to watch a comedy show today, you can do so through the search bar and it will filter out. The filter also allows you to pick shows based on the date they are posted. So if you want to look for a more recent show, it allows you to do that too. And lastly, some users might not know what they want to watch on these platforms. So we do have a feature where it allows users to see the trending videos currently, and they are able to pick from that. For the differences, as mentioned, YouTube is open to public to post, while Netflix, it requires you to email the company before you're able to get your show on their platform. And YouTube is also free, while Netflix, it requires a monthly subscription before you're able to use it. So these similarities and differences showcases their uniqueness and how these two applications solve different problems each. The problem solved by YouTube includes it makes it easier to watch videos online, and it also provides a wide repository of information for people to learn online. For example, if you want to learn C++ online, there's many different playlists made by different creators that allows you to do so. It also provides two-way communication between brands, as brands can see, for example, users post reviews on YouTube, and they're able to take reviews and make their products better for their users. As for Netflix, remember back in the past where you have to like rent actual discs before you're able to watch a movie? Netflix wants to make this process easier by making it online, so users don't have to travel to the actual DVD shops just to rent them. And it also makes the process a whole lot cheaper for the users too. So after using the YouTube and Netflix example, let's talk about what our users' goal. And over here, we have an app interface that's really similar to Grab. So I'll be moving on to the next screen. And you can type in some responses of what you think some of the goals that this interface could bring. Okay, it seems that currently everyone's on the right track, so that's quite good. And I think I've seen most of the responses that are correct already, so I'll be moving on. So firstly, the possible goals would be you can book a ride to XX destination. Similar to how you have like Grab food, you're also able to deliver food to your address. And lastly, you can also possibly deliver items through this interface in the future. So this is the more complex thing I was talking about. What do users know and don't know? So I think I'll be going through this a bit more. So based on this interface and our navigation bar, what do users know and don't know? So starting off, we're able to see how to register for a conference based on the events button, and through our Luma interface, users are able to register for our latest conference. We also know the motto of our organization, BBCS, as it is plastered in the middle of the page. However, some of the things we don't know will be the past conferences that we have organized, it cannot be seen from here. New organizers who want to sign up for BBCS will also not know how to sign up, as we do not provide an option on this website currently. So one good example of what users know and don't know would be ChatGPT, as it has given a clear description of each of its features. Starting off with examples. Examples allows users to have a better gauge on what they can type into. Thank you. Type into the prompt so that they're able to get a response that better fits them. The limitation part also better tells user what ChatGPT can do so that they do not try to exploit the machine, and it ensures that they have a better time using the app. So how do users navigate and interact? For example, when you use an app, most of your app interfaces are really easy because the buttons are really easy to find as they are really large, or they are in places where you'll see them first. And that's why you're still using the apps that you're using today. So when you're making an app, do try to make things a bit more easy for the users. And for example, do not put your button at the really, really top corner of the page, as usually no one really looks there. And it makes it really hard for them to find the button, and they will not have a good experience using your app. As for how do users interact with your site, some people might be using through phone, through iPad, laptops, and some might even be using from the TV. So we do want to ensure that the different buttons and our layout of the app suits different devices. For example, in Swift UI, there's this feature called padding, and it allows your text or images to be like a certain distance away from the borders of your devices, and thus it adjusts according to each item, which makes it a bit more accessible for users. And moving on to accessibilities. For colors, we also want to try to make our colors stand out a bit more through, for example, you can make your background white and make your text black, as they are very contrasting, and the text will be able to stand out more to the audience. This helps people who might not be able to see as well, or for example, some people might be using your app in bright sunlight, and that also hinders their vision. As for size, try not to make your text too small. Similar to in libraries where you have large prints of books, we also want to give our users a variety so that they're able to pick a font that better suits them. This allows our app to be able to cater to a larger age group, for example, the elderlies also. So starting off with the 4 main principles of UX, as mentioned before during the UI presentation, hierarchy. In Google Docs, we have this section called text styles, and it allows you to categorize your text into things like heading, title 1, title 2, and because of that, it allows us to put our focus on different things of the app. An example of this in UX would be, for example, some of your login pages, the login button will be more prominent than the sign up button, and it will encourage more users to log in first before they create a new account. As for simplicity, as the saying goes, less is more. Try not to cram too many things in one page as it distracts your users and they have too many things to focus on at one time. If you do realize that you have really too much information to cram in one page, try to group your information together and try to make another page for it. Or you could do similar to what Johan said in the UI feature, you could do the read more section, and it brings the users to a new page. As for consistency, try to keep your text and sizes within the same font and same size so that it makes your app a bit more clean for the users, and it will not be all over the place. They'll also be able to see the hierarchy a bit more easily. As for predictability, think about when you see an arrow button, you'll know that it directs you to the next page. Thus, we want to try to make use of these elements that are common in many apps so that users will not have to take too much time into thinking what this feature could be, and they'll be able to navigate your app with much ease, and it will make their whole experience a bit more fast. And these are just 4 of the many principles that we have in UX. And if you want to know more about the features, we also have this website that we have linked here, and we'll be sending the slides afterwards, so you could check them out. So this correlates to the Mentimeter screen, and you can type in, we'll be starting off with the left example of why it's a bad UX, and I'll give around 1 to 2 minutes while I collect some responses.
I want to do it.
Okay, I do not like so. Okay. Now we'll be moving on to the actual answers, but most of y'all have already pointed out. Starting off, the background is really distracting. There's this image plastered many times over, and it takes away your attention from the actual text. Secondly, the text is also blue, which is really similar to the background, and it's really hard to differentiate them if you don't focus enough. Another thing would be some of the text size, I feel it's quite small, especially this one, and it's really hard for users to see if they're using like a smaller device, for example, your phone. Do you want to add on? Okay. And now we'll be moving on to the right side, another 1 to 2 minutes for that.
Should clarify this. Like, despite your first intuition, this is also a bad user interface.
Okay, so for the right side, it's a bit harder because in overall, it looks really good and it looks really clean, but it's very there are many subtle things that make it a bad UX. So try to find that out. Okay, while the responses are still coming in, I'll be moving on to the answers for this one. So starting off, you know how usually when you type your email, you type it in one line, right? So for this one, they separate it to like 4 different columns, which honestly is a bit tedious and irrelevant because some people already have their email saved, and this makes it really hard for them, especially with all this. The second feature of why this is a bad UX would be this part. How to combine?
Which one?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Would be I do not accept the terms and condition because most of the company requires your agreement to their terms and condition before they are able to let you use their app. So by not accepting their terms and condition, the number of things you're able to use on their app is really limited and it's not beneficial for both parties. And also, someone spelled it wrongly, so it's not really a good impression for the company. So now moving on to why this is a good UX. I'll be going through this while the responses come in, so don't worry, you can just type. So firstly, this is a good UX because of its groupings and classifications. Starting off, it groups your stays and experiences differently so that you're able to find something that better suits you. Another good feature would be the filter over here, where you're able to type in your details and it's able to generate listings based on your preferences, and that's a bit more towards understanding your users' needs. Another good feature would be the color contrast because the background currently is white, while the Airbnb logo and the text are in black, and it makes the logos, images, and text stand out a bit more for users so that they're able to see a bit more clearly also. One feature that I really like from this would be the icons, because I like how the icons they have a little label underneath them, and it really explains to users what each icon mean, so that they're a bit more clear on it and they're able to make references and mental images so that they can remember these in the future. Okay. So bonus, there are also some things that may affect your UX, but also may not be from your side. Starting off, we have slow slides. This could be due to the internet and it might not be caused by your fault. Another thing that we try not to have would be unclickable button or work in progress, we try to hide that page or just don't even show that at all, because it's about the impression that someone has when they see it. They might not think that your company is a bit can be trusted or credible, as it's not really professional. So if you really have to have these type of pages, you could just put some fake data in, as we're currently just making a prototype, so it's not too big of a deal. And lastly, crashes and error also caused by your computer or the internet. So not really on your end, but they do kind of affect your user flow when they use your app. And now we'll be going on to the UX demo, which is not too hard. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're doing the UX demo. You're doing the UX demo.
I thought so you might have.
Bruh, I was so confused. Wait, what do you need? No, link. Oh no, my computer crashed.
Is
Okay.
okay. So over here we have the UX that most people should be familiar with, which is Duolingo. Very goated. So I'll be answering the questions, but I do hope that we could get some physical responses. So starting off with the first question. Oh, these questions are taken from the second slide of the UX part. Okay. So firstly, what problems do users face? Does anyone here want to tell me? Organizers. Like what problem are they facing that they'll need to be using this app? Okay, true, not wrong, not wrong. Very good, very good. And that's exactly one of the problems that users will face, other than being kidnapped. Some people want to learn a new language, and the first app that they'll automatically think of would be Duolingo. Okay. I got it. Wait.
What do you need to do?
The second. Oh. Okay, second. What do users want out of this application when they download this app? Honestly, these questions, you don't have to think too hard. It's most of them are really just one-liners.
Anyone?
Anybody? Oh, no.
You know. Why do you think?
Oh, wait, she's raising her hand.
Okay.
Okay, no problem.
I mean, basically for those who are not in the loop of the Duolingo lore, the dual kidnaps your family if you don't learn a language. So yeah.
Especially Spanish.
Yeah,
You'll
yeah.
vanish. Okay, but
Oh, yes.
yeah.
So they want to learn a new language.
Exactly. It's really not too complex. So yeah. So exactly as what Johan said, you do want to learn a new language when you download this application. This part, as I've mentioned before, might be a bit complex. So what do users know beforehand, other than the dual law?
Any volunteers?
Not wrong. Mm, I think for this response is really just one thing. So I'll just go through the art. So most of the time when you come into a language learning app, you'll be coming in with the knowledge of the language that you want to learn. So for example, today I want to learn Korean or something, then I'll download this app and search for the Korean language. And before it allows me to go through the vocab exercises, etc. And for the next question, how do you think the app flows? Like, how do you think these apps link to each other? Also very simple. Should I dance?
Just answer.
Wait, wait, wait. You want to arrow people? Threaten.
Okay, can you?
Okay.
Guys, it's the fourth question. I'm sure like some of you like it's honestly simple questions and don't overthink it. So like, yeah, we might arrow people.
Oh no. Don't arrow fast. Oh, with the guy in blue shirt like to answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go from left to right. Yeah.
Okay, technically not wrong. Okay, so I'll say how it flows would be after you pick a language, then you'll be brought to this page. Wait, I'll bring. And it will let you choose about how intense you want your language learning journey to be. And afterwards, they'll then bring you to the vocab page. So that will be kind of a simple app flow, really not too complex. And lastly, how do users interact with the site? Yeah, it's honestly just one thing for this app. Would you like to? Yeah. Fine. How do users interact with the site? Exactly, quite literally, it's just buttons. So like all these are actually just buttons. So that's for Duolingo, they only use buttons for interaction. And with that, it's a very simple UX demo. And now I'll be moving on to the UI demo with
Alright.
Brit.
Sure. Can you move?
Sorry.
Okay.
So while Brayden's setting up, basically the next section would be a Figma demo. And so we've learned a lot of principles and concepts in the last two sections. And I must admit there's some overlap between UI and UX, although like Shengxin listed out all of the different distinct characteristics. But in practice, they are very much used together, conjoined. That's why you hear people saying UI UX together. And now we're gonna be putting that into practice with our Figma demo. Yeah.
So what's up, guys? I hope you guys are having fun in this workshop so far. So now we're moving on to the more hands-on section. Okay. So, wait, what?
Are you unmuted?
Yeah, I am. So what is Figma? Figma balls. Okay. Sorry, I apologize for that. Okay. But okay, so Figma is very similar to like PowerPoint or Canva in that it's a graphic design tool, except it's tailored towards design of UI of say websites or applications. And so it acts as the bridge between design and development. So normally you have a graphic designer who works on Figma prototypes and designs. Then they would then send that to say a front-end developer who will convert that design into code with HTML, CSS, etc. So now you guys are gonna have to set up Figma. So you guys can just do the first 3 bullet points first. We'll be giving you a link to a Figma file later on. So you just need to go to figma.com/downloads. We highly recommend you to download the app. You can connect to the SMU Wi-Fi. Just download for Windows or Mac, and then sign up for an account. Although the browser version is quite similar, but some of the fonts may not work with the browser version. So you guys should download that. So I'll just give you guys about, say, 3 minutes, all right, to get connected and download it. Okay.
Yeah, so we're moving on from our lecture style, and from now on we're gonna be doing like a more hands-on demo. So for certain parts we'll tell you when. Yeah, I've already created like a starting up kit, so it's easier for you to follow along later on when Braden recreates an app screen. Yeah, so we'll be walking around if you need help with the Figma download. Actually, wait, can I have a show of hands? Who already downloaded Figma? Oh, fantastic.
wow.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you guys can't connect to the SMU Wi-Fi, feel free to raise up your hand. I can lend you my hotspot.
Wow. How generous.
Maybe you should do it too.
Wow, I think I ran out of data already.
Let's go. Oh no, sorry.
Right.
Also, you're not sharing your screen.
So you're not sharing. I'm sharing like for you temporarily.
Oops. Oopsies. My apologies, I wasn't sharing my screen just now, but I think you could still see it from behind. Okay, maybe I'll give you guys like 1 more minute, and then we can almost start already. Oh.
I don't know. It was 11:30.
Okay. Okay. Never mind.
Um,
Sometime.
Also, you're not. You don't have your camera on. Oh, what?
It's on.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's going to be. Wait, could you go back to Teams? Just let me check something.
Bye.
Because like, do you click the option which?
I have.
No.
Like-
This needs to be.
Oh.
This. Yeah, if I'm not wrong.
Hmm.
Yeah. No.
Oh. Hello guys. Sorry, my camera wasn't on just now. So we're just giving you guys some time to set up Figma. Yeah, just sign up for the account and download it.
You can import without the desktop.
Can I just have a show of hands who's like not done? Okay.
All right. I think we can resume. Okay, so before we get into the hands-on demo, I'm just gonna give you a quick tour of the Figma interface, just so you guys don't feel so lost. Okay, so first, yeah.
Guys, this is a very, very important part. Please listen up because you wouldn't know what to do later on if you don't listen to, like, this is your fundamentals, okay? So if you haven't, like, if you did not like download the app and you're still trying to figure out how, and you didn't like raise up your hand just now, don't worry, like later on during the hands-on section, just raise your hand, we'll help you. But for now, please pay attention. Yeah.
All right. So the first thing to take note of is the canvas here. So the canvas is where everything happens. So in Figma, the canvas is like an infinite page where you can put all your components and designs inside here. So now on the left, we have the layers panel over here. So the layers panel basically shows you firstly, what pages do you have in your file. So in Figma, pages are not the individual pages of your app. Rather, they are an instance of the canvas where you can have an infinite number of pages in your app design if you wanted to. And down here we have the layers. So as Yuhan mentioned previously, hierarchy is very important in UI design. And so the layers panel just gives some structure to the components, and you can see like, oh, like which components are part of other components. Okay, and down here we have the toolbar. So the toolbar is probably the most important part of the interface. You basically be doing work with it like all the time. And the same thing goes for the properties board on the right. So for each like component or shape, you have their own properties where you can control like position, size, stroke effects, etc., which I'll be going through in detail later on. All right, so before we do the demo, I'm just gonna give you guys an overview of the toolbar. So as you see, there's a lot of buttons and functions. So I just want to quickly go through it with you guys before we get cracking.
Yeah, so by the way, if you like hover over most buttons in Figma, there will be a little overlay telling you the name of that button. So just in case you forget, like, yeah, what each button does. Take it away.
All right, so I'm just gonna go through each aspect of the toolbar individually. All right, so first on the leftmost side, you have the move tool. So now, as the name suggests, the move tool helps you move stuff around. Okay, very, very simple. And over here, if you click the down arrow here, you can see that there's other options here. So if you wanted to use the hand tool, you can just press H like so. And the hand tool just helps, it's just mainly used for like browsing and stuff. If like it helps you to scroll around the page without like moving stuff. Say if I had my move tool by pressing V, you can see if I try and scroll around, it will mess stuff up. All right, and then also, if you press K, you can also go to the scale tool. And the scale tool just helps you to scale shapes and stuff up and down while keeping the proportions the same. Okay, so now moving on to the right, we have the frame button. So what are frames? Well, frames are the individual actual like pages of your website or your mobile app. So this right here, so this screen right here is a frame of your app. And frames can also be like individual components, but it's just most commonly used to act as the pages in your app. All right, now moving on, we have the shape button. So now shapes are just like the individual components of your design. So for example, if you press R, it's the shortcut for the rectangle, and you can just drag it out, similar to how you would drag out like a text box in like Canva or PowerPoint. It's pretty simple. And let's say you want this to be like a perfect square, you could hold Shift, could press Shift, and it will make it, sorry, let me undo it. You just drag it out and press Shift, it will make it a perfect square. Now, one thing to note is when you're making these squares, you need to release left click before releasing shift. If not, it'll mess it up. Okay, so just take note of that. And another common shortcut is O for sphere, for circle or ellipse. So once again, if you want to make an oval, you just drag it around. And if you want it to be a perfect circle, you can hold shift. And yeah, it's pretty neat. Actually, going back to frames, sorry, I just need to show you guys that when we make frames, there are actually a lot of presets available depending on which device you're developing for. So as you can see, there's all the iPhones, tablets, desktop, everything, and they all have their own preset dimensions, which we'll show you guys later on. All right, next up is the pen tool. So this pen tool, we're not going to be using much of it today, but just know that it's just meant for you to make like your own custom shapes and like draw with it. But it's pretty advanced, so we're not going to cover it today. Let me just undo that real quick. All right, so now let's move on to the text. So you can just add a text box like so. Now, one thing to note is that text in Figma differs from text boxes and text in other applications that you may have used before, such as Canva and PowerPoint. So Yuhan will be so kindly explaining.
Yeah. So can I have a show of hands who has used Canva here before? Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So now let me start off with the most obvious difference in for text boxes. Where's your mouse, bro? Oh, okay. Yeah. So over here, let me make a text box. Type something. Okay. Now the first thing you realize is that when I enlarge the text box over here, it doesn't change the font size of the text. And it's a small thing, but sometimes it gets a bit annoying. So how you can remedy this situation is number one, you can either go over to your typography section in your properties bar, and then you can change the font size directly over here. Alternatively, Braden just now covered the scale too. And yeah, so this is a way how you can do it. By the way, I've included, you'll get this file later, so you can refer to this helpful shortcuts section. Oh yeah, this is supposed to be a Mac edition, sorry. Yeah, and you can refer to this one over here, proportional scaling for text. Yeah, so it's basically the scale tool, which you can find over here. But the shortcut for it is K. So you press K once. Yeah, and then you see that your cursor becomes this kind of like double arrowed square, but like twice. So yeah, now you can scale it proportionally according to the size of your text box. If you want to exit, just press either press K again, or you can go to your properties bar over here, and you can just click exit on scale. So yeah, all right. So something else that I want to mention is that you realize that in Canva, sometimes when you type out text, right, your text box actually scales with the size of your text, with the length of your text, sorry. But let's say we drag out like a tiny text box. You see that the text actually extends beyond the text box. And the reason why this is important is because when you're aligning things, and Figma shows you all of those guiding red lines. Let me just demonstrate over here. You see these guiding red lines? You realize that it actually aligns based on the size of your text box instead of the size of your text. Now this is a problem, right? So let me demonstrate, for example. Yeah, if I want to center, sorry, wait. Okay. Yeah, if I want to center this text box, you realize that it's a bit to the more bottom part, even though I requested for it to be in the center of the frame. Yeah, because it aligns based on the text box. So one thing that I want to guide your attention towards is in the properties bar, there's this thing called layout. Okay. In the layout section, you can fine-tune the dimensions of your text box, but there's also these three buttons below. And this is something that Canva doesn't have. So right now, by default, every single text box that you drag out is a fixed size. So that means like no matter how long your text is or whatever, your text box is going to the size of your text box is going to stay the exact same. Okay, so now we want to explore auto height over here, so that automatically scales your height. But for example, if you have a, let's see, okay, so basically auto height, when you drag out your text box, it will only occupy the space of in terms of height of your text. And the difference of this between this and auto and the next button, which is auto width over here, is that, so for auto width, let's say for example beforehand, let me go back to fixed size. If let's say you want to have a 2-line text, right, and you press auto width, it will automatically like scale the text box in terms of height and width, even though it's just called auto width. So no matter how long, if let's say you didn't make a paragraph break, right, no matter how long your sentence is, it would just scale infinitely, even beyond the frame. And yeah, so sometimes this gets a bit messy, which is why I recommend for beginners, if you want to tweak the size of your text box, always explore auto height first and see if it's what you want. And if you already know that you want this text box to be a one-liner, you can go automatically to auto width over here. Yeah, I think that should be about it. Yeah, so this is like a very important property that's different between Figma and Canva, and beginners always get confused why like the two applications don't work the same, especially for a functionality as common as just adding in a text. So just take note. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Yuhan. So now I think we can get started on the actual project for today. Okay, so what we'll be doing is we're gonna make like an iOS mobile travel app, and this app just helps you to like find like a certain destination, and then you can have a book now button over here, and yeah, it's really just really nice. And so we just want you guys to learn like the very bare basics of Figma, and also like the thought process behind designing and recreating something. So can I just invite you guys to either scan the QR code, or you can also type the link manually.
Yeah, so the resources, the Google Drive for resources, this links to a font that you might need to download, especially if you're not a Mac. The slides of this like workshop, and also a Figma file, .fig file that you can import into your Figma. But if you click on this link on the left over here, do note that this directly links you. Oh, can you? Yeah, so it leads you to this. Oh, there's a lot of people here already, but it leads you to this section over here. And I don't think you have edit access. I only gave you view access, and the point is to create a copy of this of your own. So go click your Figma button on the top left. And then over in file, select save local copy. That would download a .fig file, which is basically the same thing in the Google Drive, and you need to import it then to your Figma.
So you can just open it with Figma.
Yeah.
You can right click and open with Figma.
Okay, go around.
Okay,
Go around and check.
let's see. I should be getting off the phone. Where's Yuan? Where's Yuan? Oh, Yuan, is it good? Are we good?
You asked if anyone is still having any trouble.
Is anyone still having trouble copying to their desktop? Anybody? Anyone needs help? Just raise your hand and we'll come over to you. Nobody? Okay, I think I just give like 1 more minute now. I think that time ends at 11. Not the online.
Like, just tell them to raise their hand or something. Oh,
Hi guys. If you guys have any trouble downloading Figma or like copying the stuff,
Open a ticket in Discord.
yes, raise your hand and open a ticket in Discord, and an online facilitator will attend to you shortly. Okay.
Yep, so just make sure that you have copied the file already. Just make sure that you have added access to whatever file you're on. Yeah.
There's still people on the
Yeah, that's why I'm
file,
like
so
worried.
guys, get off the shared file already.
Bro, are you gonna be editing this?
No, no. I think I have my own copy.
Okay, good.
Wait. Yeah, there's no copy. Hold on, let me just rewrite the What are you guys doing?
Bro,
I'm watching a bunch of bees
you're right.
flocking around.
Frolicking in the bushes.
Yeah, frolicking. Yeah.
Okay. I assume everyone's done. So yeah.
All right. Okay, so you just want to head on over. As you can see here, this is your main editing page over here. And to start off, to recreate your own version of this, what you're gonna do is add a new page over here. So what you do is you just go up to the top left and hit the plus button, and then you can rename it. I'm just gonna call this demo, and you can see it gives you like a blank, fresh canvas. But before that, I'll just quickly give you guys a quick overview. So here we have what we're going to be making today, just a quick page. And then over here, we have our assets bank. So later we're going to be using all these assets so that you guys don't have to like fish them out of Google or something. We have prepared all this for you. And over here, some references in case you need. Okay, so now moving to the blank fresh page, the first thing we're going to do is we need to make a new frame. So just press F. Hold on, let me minimize this. Just press F, and then you can go ahead and go and select these presets over here. So for me, for us, this ad is for the iPhone 16 Plus. So you can just click it, and it's as easy as that. It will insert and give you a nice frame to work on. So on the layer section, just to keep ourselves organized, you can double click on it and you can call it, because this is a page about the Andes Mountains. Anyone been to the Andes Mountains? No? Right. Okay. So once you've added a frame, now, so the order of this demo, what we're going to do is we're going to start from the top down. So as you can see over here, up here, we have this design element this is actually from Apple. As you can see, it's like the Apple design. This is called the navigation bar. And often to kickstart our designs, we often use what's known as design kits. And in this case, this is from the iOS Apple design kits. So I will let Yuhan explain to you like what design kits are and how to use them, especially for iOS.
Okay, so design kits are basically a collection of elements that are pre-made for you beforehand. And so your experience becomes somewhat a bit more like Figma, where you just search for elements and then you drag it into your canvas in order to make it your own, right? So I'm going to demonstrate from start to end how to utilize a typical design kit. So design kits can be kind of modded to different extents. Yeah, I will explain what I mean later on, but basically over here, let's just search iOS Apple Design Kit Figma. Oh yeah, by the way, for this section, please don't follow along, especially for like non-Mac users, and just pay attention because you might be using you might not have the correct font installed and you won't be able to edit the texts. But yeah, no worries, it's no biggie. Okay. So yeah, in Figma's community, people can upload different design kits, and this is one by Apple officially. Click open in Figma. And so the experience of using a design kit is quite different from how you would normally like edit your elements, in the sense that it's a lot more restricted, and rather than something that's free form, it feels more a bit like filling in a form. Okay, you'll get what I mean later on. So for example, over here, let's go to, oh no, this is slow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so over in the navigation bars section, we find over here a collection of navigation bars. So wait, can I have a show of hands who does Swift over here? Oh wow, absolutely no. Oh, thanks. Okay, yeah. So basically over here, you realize number one difference is that when you hover over any element, instead of a blue outline, you see a purple outline. This is an evidence of this set of elements being kind of modded. The official term for this is having variables added to it. Don't worry too much about it for now. For now, but basically the one thing that I want all of you to take note is how to copy this element into your own file, because it's not just as easy as clicking Control C and Control V. So basically because of how it's modded, right? Okay, the process of modifying a modded element is more like filling in a form. So for example, over here, okay, when you copy over an element, go to your layer section on the left over here and make sure that what's selected is the entire thing. Okay, so the entire group underneath default, instead of, for example, just materials, because it occupies the same space as default. As you can see, I'm switching between these two, but it's basically occupying the same space. You need to make sure that you select everything. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you copy it over, and let's say, okay, whatever. So for example, let me just add it in. Okay. Make a new page over here. And then I copy it over. Yeah, so when you scroll up over here, you realize that instead of being greeted by a normal properties bar, you have a bunch of toggles, a bunch of drop downs, and a bunch of text boxes. This is what I mean by it's more like filling in a form, in the sense that when you modify the texts, for example, so over here it says title, right? So I'm modifying this part over here. Yeah. So So this is how you modify something in a design kit instead of directly clicking on it and modifying it like this. This will break the entire thing. Okay. Yeah. So for example, if I don't want this part over here, I can switch off add this buttons. Yeah, for example, if I want like more buttons over here, I can just add these things. If I don't want this button at all, I can close this toggle. So one very helpful thing is that when you scroll through, when you hover through all of these different fields in the properties bar, it will show you what is corresponding. Yeah, so this is an important property to take note of when you're using design kits. Okay. That's about it. Yeah. Brayden. I don't think you can go back to the tab bar without like. Okay. Wait, what's your thing? Okay, just here's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so essentially design kits, like they're kind of similar to like libraries in code in that they are like pre-packaged components that like speed up your design process, and like it basically does like all like the groundwork for you, so you don't have to like mess with like each of like the fonts and the layouts and stuff. Alternatively, right, instead of Googling, you can also go over here and click layouts, assets, and you can see here you can actually access the iOS design kit from here as well. But we don't need to do that. Okay, so also, if you haven't installed the font in the Google Drive, please do so as soon as possible because we'll be using it. But if you don't have the font or can't install it, that's fine. You can just use Inter as a substitute or any font that you like. Okay, let me go back to files and I'll head over to demo. All right, so I'm just gonna steal this nav bar. So, and you can just import it by just pasting it in. As you can see down here, so we have it already configured. The title is Andes Mountains, and we have the left label set to home. Okay. So now moving down onwards. Now the first thing I see is of course this magnificent image over here of the mountains, and I can see that it's in a rectangular shape, and this shape has curved corners right here. So we're gonna have to do that. And also, if you look closely down here, there's actually a bit of drop shadow here that helps to sort of lift it up from the page and make it sort of more visually separated from the page. So we're just gonna make that now. Okay. So you can just press R and you can manually add this rectangle over here, just a regular rectangle, just drag it out. Now, I'm just going to set it to the same dimensions here, just to ensure consistency. So it's 369 by 378. So instead of manually dragging out, if you want it to be very precise, you can also just manually set the dimensions here. So I'm going to set it to 369 and 378 right here in your properties board. Okay, and then you can just sort of center it. So similar to like PowerPoint, it kind of like snaps into place. So similarly, Figma has that nice feature. I will sit down. Okay, so once we're done with that, we can add our curved corners. So there's two ways of doing this. Number one, you can click on the shape, just left click, and then you can go over here to the corner. There's this little circles here. You can just drag it inwards. Or alternatively, you can also go down to your properties board and you can manually select the corner radius just here. And also there's this corner smoothing, which I like. So I'm just gonna set it to here, 60% iOS, yes. Okay, so now we've pretty much prepared the shape already. So now we want to paste in our nice little image of the Andes. So of course, if you had like a file on like your computer, you could just go to fill image, and you can upload it from your computer. But since I already have the asset prepared, I can go up here to the main page, and you can copy. But when you copy, you have to copy as SVG. You can't just copy plainly, if not it won't work later. Just copy as SVG. Then, while clicking on the shape, you just Control V. Sorry, hold on. You have to go to this page and you Control V. Never mind. It's okay. We will go and find the image on Google and we will download it.
Let me try to do it.
Oh, you want to try to do it?
Yeah. Okay.
Never mind.
Yeah. So
Han will give it a go.
let me just explain. There are two ways of making your of cropping your image into a certain shape that you want. Okay, so one version that Braden did just now was to make the shape of the image first, okay, without actually putting in the image. And so the caveat of this method is that you can't copy and paste images, okay? And you can only upload from the computer. But if you copy and paste your image, okay. So if you copy and paste your image just now, where is it? Yeah. So you copy it, you paste it somewhere. Just paste it in here first. Do you mind?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so you delete this. You paste it in, and you can change the dimensions of the image itself. Okay. So wait, what did you use? Okay. So okay, let's just say I just drag it, okay, to something that I like, okay. Corner radius, I believe he put 25. Okay. That he likes. Okay. And yeah, ta-da, that's also a quicker way to do it. Basically, you modify the properties of the image itself instead of modifying the property of a shape that you are going to sub the image in. Okay? Everyone good? Hurrah! Okay, go for it.
In my defense, it worked at 3 a.m. last night. I think I'm seeing things. Okay, so let me just set it. Okay, and then now you see we still need to add the effect of drop shadows. How are we gonna do that? We can go over here to down to our properties board, scroll down all the way to effects, and you can add effects. And by default it's drop shadow, but there's also other effects like blur and inner shadow and other stuff. Yeah, we might cover some of that later on. So now you can, to configure your drop shadow, you can go over here and click the effects settings. I'm gonna leave the blur the same, but maybe I will make the color a bit darker. So you can change the alpha of the shadow here a little bit.
Alpha is opacity.
Yes, alpha is opacity. And you can also increase the spread if you wanted, but we don't need that much. So, okay, sure. All right. So now we're done with our sort of nice background shape here. Now you can see we have this inner part here. So this is like a card which gives you the overview. So you can see the location and you can see the price here is a bit expensive. 2.3K. Damn, okay. So to make that, we're just gonna start off with the rectangular shape. So now when we're making these sort of cut components, I like to do it like on the side here instead of doing over the image or over our frame. So I can just go and press R, the shortcut for rectangle, and then you can drag out roughly, just roughly first, your little card background here. Okay, and then once again, similar to the background image, we can also add corner radius, just nice. You'll notice in UI, there's a lot of curved corners just because it looks much prettier. Okay, so now we have our shape. Let me just go back here just to show you guys. You see there's this weird like effects going on, right? There's this fancy like blur effect here that's going on. And it's also like a darker color. So I'm going to teach you how to make this effect and also with the drop shadow down here. So actually to see it better, I will actually end up moving to the image here. And let me just bring it to the front. It's not working. Okay, never mind. We will just do it here first. Great, splendid. Okay. So as you can see over here in our properties board, we have this fill option here. Now you can see that, well, just to decipher the effect, you can see that, well, it's actually not completely opaque. You can still see a bit of the background image. So we can just make this a little bit less. So I'm gonna make this like 40%, right? And also, if you look over here, you can see that there's also a blur effect because like the background image, the image in the background is like all blurred up here. Okay. Test. All right.
Bit short.
Okay.
Put it on the table.
So, hello, hello. All right. So now you can go and add an effect down here. And we're going to use two effects. So you can add multiple effects. You just click the plus button again, and it will give you two little options for your effects. So first one is going to be drop shadow. And then the second one is going to be our background blur. Now we can't really see it here because...
Do you want to clip in?
Hmm?
Do you want to clip the mic?
Oh, clip where? Okay. Serious.
Okay, if it doesn't work, it's fine.
No, actually, the image is blocking the shape. Need to find out. I think it's
Because your
because
image is not part of your frame.
oh, sick. It was your image. It was your image.
Same thing.
Okay, so one thing to take note of, which is a mistake I did just now, is that you need to make sure that your shape is a part of your frame. Everything has to be part of the frame. If not, it will like appear like behind, and you won't be able to see it, and it'll mess stuff up.
Also, one thing about elements being part of your frame is that only then, if you find that your alignment, like your red lines, aren't working, most likely it's just because although your element looks like it's overlapping with your frame, it's actually not within your frame. So in order to check for that, just go to your layers bar at the side and make sure that it's subsumed underneath your frame.
All right, and just before I forget, one more thing for our background image here is that just now, as Johan mentioned, we need to ensure that the viewers and readers of this mobile app have sufficient contrast to be able to see text clearly. So what we can do is we can go over here to the fill section of our properties board. And over here, you can see we can mess with like a lot of like settings to like edit it. But for me, I just need to lower down the exposure a bit, just a bit, so that I can boost the contrast. And we can continue, now we can continue working on our effect. So now it's translucent already, so we can just need to add a huge ton of background blur. Let's say about here. Actually, instead of darkening the image, I will just brighten it up a tad bit because our actual shape is going to be dark. So let me just darken it up a little bit. And then we can add a huge ton of blur to make it look fancy. Okay, maybe a little bit darker. All right. And lastly, we need to add, we can't forget about our drop shadow. So we go down here to effects and we can configure it. You can always zoom in with Control plus Zoom, with mouse wheel up, and you can increase the darkness right here. Now, another quick tip for Figma is that instead of like manually typing in the values, you can also use your mouse and hover, and you can like drag it left and right in order to tweak it, just speed stuff up a little bit. So I'm just adding the drop shadow. All right, okay. So now we have to add our text, as we can see over here. So we can just create a text box. And I'm gonna type in these mountains. Oh no, you can see our text box a bit messed up because of how Figma does things, but we can quickly fix it by going to layout and selecting auto width so that it expands it fully horizontally. Okay. So of course we're using the SF Pro font, but if you guys don't have that, you can also use Inter. It's a great substitute. Okay. And okay, let me just quickly add our stuff, the rest of our stuff. So let me hold this. Hold it. Okay. Okay, not so close, not so close. And of course, to preserve the hierarchy, we're gonna decrease the size of this subheader, and then we can also make the font lighter over here. Let me just make it 11. And I'll change the text box to tidy it up to text width. Okay. This is a bit weird. Okay. All right. So now you can see we need to add our logos. So of course, where you find these like logos and SVGs, you can go online to like Google. A good website like Icons8 or something. But thanks to this wonderful demo file that we have prepared, we already have some logos from SF Symbols, which is Apple's proprietary icons, which you can't access on Windows. But okay, I will just copy, Control C. And when you paste stuff, just make sure you're not selecting anything, just to avoid the risk of it messing up anything. And I will just arrange it like so. And I will quickly redo what the other side.
Which right here?
Yeah.
Which right here?
Oh, okay. So once again, I'm just gonna paste it. Okay. Okay. And we just add our price like so. All right, so I think we're pretty much done with this upper portion over here. We have our shape and our text. And oh wait. And we can move on. So now, as you can see here, we have another piece of text down here, overview. And of course, you want to use a heavier font once again to preserve the hierarchy. Hey guys, this is quite important, so please do follow along. Okay, so you can just create a text box and go to just type overview. Yeah. No need, no need this. No need. It's okay. Overview, and of course make it the text width, and I'm gonna use heavy, big, black, and heavy, and use a massive font. and you can move it so that it aligns with the rest of your margins. So now moving on, we will learn how to make these buttons or tags as they're called. You can see over here, we have our 2 tags over here. And basically you can see that they are composed of both a shape with curved corners as well as text. So we can just make that quickly. So just press R once again. It is pretty repetitive with all like the curved corners and the text and the rectangles, but this is like 90% of doing UI. So it's just like that. So you just have to bear with it. And over here, you can add our corner radius. 30. I'll put it to 30. Okay. And we can also make our text up here. So the first tag is titled nature. Oh no, our text is too big. We can decrease the size. Regular. And let's just decrease it down to say 14. And of course, we want to make it text width so it doesn't mess up our formatting and stuff. So I'm gonna position it just about here for now. And now I'm gonna move my shape down here. And we can just sort of edit it. What? Oh yeah, sure. So no, later on. So now that we've positioned it nicely, we just need to make the color the same. So we can just go over here, go over to fill. And now Figma has this really nice feature for preserving like your brand colors and for like easy reference. So it'll give you a list of the colors on this page. So our accent color, which is the color that we're going to use to emphasize certain things, is going to be blue, which is the same as like apple blue, I think. Yes. So we just make the fill of our text to be blue. Then we select the rectangle. Then we make that fill to be perfectly transparent. It's okay. Just make it transparent. And it's okay. It's okay.
Let's just change the value directly, bro. Stroke first.
Yes. So we add our blue color and we make the fill transparent.
So for those of you who are familiar with Canva and not familiar with something like web dev, the difference between fill and stroke is that the stroke is the outline. So sometimes we opt to have no background, which is the fill, and we just preserve the stroke. Yeah, like so.
Okay, so now once you've done up our button, now one last thing that we need to do is we want to group this text and this outline together. So now what grouping does, it basically just helps us to move this object as a whole. Instead of say having to move my text and then, oh no, I left my outline and then I have to move that separately also. And it's just a pain. So we can just select it and click Ctrl G to group it. And as you can see here, we can see a group over here in our layers. Okay. All right. So now that we're done with one of our buttons, we can just copy and paste it over. And now we can add our other tag, which is historical. And oh no, once again, our text box is messed up, but we can just solve it pretty quickly with auto width. And then now we want to select our shape and we just extend it like so. And yeah, okay. And now we want to move it up a little bit. So we can select both at once and just move it nice and up. All right. So up next, we can see over here, we have our little text here. So this text is just talking about the nature aspects of the place or the historical aspects, depending on which tag the user enables. But first, where's the lorem text? Let me just go grab the dummy lorem text. And let me just paste it in. Oh, and we need to make it a black fill. My apologies. Right here. And wow, perfect. So now we've added our text, but wait, something's missing, right? We need to, as you can see over here, if I refer to it, you can see over here, oh, the text fades out. So like, how we're going to achieve this effect is through the use of gradients. So if I just centered my text over here, and so the way we're going to use gradients is over here, it's under the fill section as well. You can head on over to gradient fill here. And so this allows you to define certain steps in your gradient. So it goes, currently it's going from black to gray, but we're going to want it to go from black to transparent. But first, you can see, well, the gradient's headed in the wrong direction. It's headed from left to right. So we need to flip it. And we can just use this flip feature here just to make it top down. And now we want to start at black, fully black. And now we're going to start at fully transparent. So we're just going to select the black color. And then we're going to change the opacity down to 0 so that it fades out nicely. All right, done. Finally, okay. And we can move on to our last section or penultimate section, which is going to be our cards components over here before we finally go on to our book now button. So just to go back here. So now, because I want to save some time, I can just copy and paste this text to preserve the formatting, and we can just type in attractions. Nicely like so. And now we can get cracking on our card components. So as you can see here, this card has like a nice picture of like one of the attractions, Machu Picchu. And then there's gonna be like a title and then also some subtext down here. So the way we're gonna do this is through the use of two rectangular shapes. I'm just gonna roughly do this because we need to speed up a little bit. Huh? Yeah, no. So we're gonna do this with two rectangles joined together. So the first rectangle is gonna be on the left. And over here, what we're gonna do, since in this final card here, you can see that all four corners are curved. However, if we made it with two rectangles, let me just show you real quick. Made it two rectangles like so, and we like curved all the corners, you can see that, well, now it just looks demonic. So what we can do is we can make use of Figma's mixed corner radius feature. And we can go down here to corner radius, select this option on the right side here, and you can increase the corner radius of each corner independently, just really nicely. So I'm just gonna settle on 15. Okay, and then over here, we're gonna do the same thing for the other side. Wait, sorry, just go down here. And I'm gonna set these left-hand side values to 0. And then set this side to 15. Great. So now we have our nice little card component here. Now I'm just gonna put it like this for now. So I need to add my images once again. Oh,
Yeah.
oh. What was it just now? Oh, it's Machu Picchu. It actually didn't work.
On your computer.
But they don't have it.
Yep. So Brayden has it on his computer, so he can insert it as a fill in his rectangle. But you guys can directly format on the image itself when you copy and paste it over.
So just use the same method that Yuhan was showing you guys just now. But for me, I have it on my computer already. So next up, we need to do up our text. So to do that, we will just press T once again, and let's just do Machu Picchu. Oh, let me fix my text once again. Machu Picchu. And on typography, because in the hierarchy, this is like just like a subtitle. It's like a subheader, because we don't want it to have the same emphasis or gravitas as our section headers right here. So we want to make it smaller a little bit. So, and I will of course make the fonts smaller to match it. And let me just position it like so. And now, pretty straightforward, we'll just insert our lorem text.
This is keyboard spam.
Keyboard spam instead. And of course, for our subtitles, we want it to be very light. And okay. All right.
Just copy and paste it.
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah. So now, once we prepared our component, we can just group it together. Okay, you just group it together once again with Control G, just to arrive at our finished card. So I can just call this down here, just, and now we can move on to the other card, which is just gonna be copy pasting. Over here.
Oh, 9 and later.
All right.
Yep. So because this is a button, don't forget to add some drop shadow.
So after grouping it, you can just click on it once, and you can add some drop shadow real quick. Just press plus drop shadow, done. And you can configure it if you want, but I don't really have time for that. Now on to our final section. So we have the book now, our amazing book now button down here. And it's just, of course, comprised of a rectangle as well as curved corners. So I'm just going to make this like a lot. Yes. You might go on time.
I wanna like see some coding read.
Okay. Okay, so now we scroll down to fill once again, and we just give it our nice accent color. to emphasize it so that users will want to book it. And we can have book now. And make it text width so that we can center this. Actually, before that, we will adjust the font, heavy font, and you can adjust it like so. So just a rectangle with very curved corners. And lastly, for our finishing touch, pretty much, we have to add our logo right here, or our symbol. And once again, it's in the demo file. Just copy it and my apologies, guys. We have to move a little quickly, so I'm sorry if you guys weren't able to like follow along fully. But you guys have access to the demo file, so you guys can finish it later on. So actually, to center it well, I will just group these components up, Control G, and then I can center this as a whole. So it looks a little bit more symmetrical, although I'll move this on. Okay, so that about wraps up this page. But now what we want to do is we want to add a little bit of interactivity, because Figma is not just about UI, it's also about UX. So Figma allows you to sort of prototype and say, let me just show you guys real quick. If I go over to prototype and press this play button up here, you can see here that there'll be this nice little mock-up version of like the app. And it's actually, if you set it to be interactive, you can actually like trial out like the user flow. So for example, if I wanna go back to home, I can just press the back button if I want to go back here. And now if users want to book it, we can just tap book now. And you can see we arrive on this test page, which I was too lazy to make. As for how to make this interactivity, let me just show you with my home page here in our assets. So you can just copy. By the way, when you're selecting frames, it's not left click, it's right click. It's just different like that. So you can just copy it. And let me just paste in my frame so I can add a little bit of interactivity. So now on the top right here, you're going to want to move to prototype. And here we can select the settings, which is iPhone 16 Plus, white, yeah, whatever. And so first we're going to select the element that we want to add our interactivity to. So I can just add, I can just select this back symbol here, and I can go over here to the top right and select interactions. I can add a plus, and the trigger is on tap, and the action is to navigate to home page. And you can see it adds a little arrow so that just to visualize a little bit. And say if we want to add another interaction that takes us from the home page to our product page, we can click on this switch on this component, add plus, and navigate to Andes Mountains. And now if we press play, oh, actually I already had it running. Let's just wait for this to load once again. There's actually interactivity, as you can see. So it's just a very neat way to sort of fully test out your application. And also for certain hackathons, you can try and pass this off as a finished product if the judges don't realize. But of course, the end game with Figma is always to convert it into code. So you could do that manually with like a front-end developer, or Figma also has certain Figma to HTML functionalities, which I won't be going through. But like say the leftmost side of the toolbar, you have your dev mode. So you can turn that on, and then you can there's a whole bunch of settings to like find out like the CSS code and HTML for everything. Or you can use extensions here on the right, and you can search, say, Figma to HTML. And you can convert it to HTML code with these handy extensions. So now I'll pass the time on to Yuhan, who will say some finishing words for this demo.
Yep. So I just want to point out a few, I guess, characteristics about Figma to help you grasp it, as well as add on some notes and things to take note of. So let's start with the most recent one, which is the prototype, and also the Figma to HTML part. So just now, Braden demonstrated how you can rename each element over here. For example, I can call this rectangle 11. I can double click on this on the layers page, and then I can just rename it whatever I want. And at first glance, you might think that this is kind of like useless, right? Because most of the time you're going to be clicking and selecting elements from the visual interface over here rather than the list at layers, the layers page at the side. But this is very important if you want to convert your Figma to HTML. Those of you who have done web dev before would know that like your different elements sometimes can be named different things. And so in HTML, when you're just faced with like code and not as visual of an interface as Figma, you would need to know exactly what rectangle means what, right? So yeah, if you have the intention of converting it to HTML, please do name your components. I learned this the very, very hard way in a hackathon. Yeah. Okay, so you know what hackathon I'm talking about, right? Yeah. So other than that, yeah, just to a side note, right? For in the interest of time, we didn't really properly center everything, but I just want to show a neat feature about grouping. So normally in, let's say, sorry, 1 second. So normally in Canva, right, when you want to, let's say, let me just like move this elsewhere. Okay, you can't really see it. Let me move it here. Okay, so when you align it, right, for example, over here, it will align according to whatever frame that you're working on. But in Figma, it's different in the sense that it will align according to its parent element. I mean this in terms of, for example, this is very handy when, let's say, you have grouping, right? Just now, Braden aligned it based on like the red lines, which for all intents and purposes, it's good enough. But if you want to speed things up, you can group these together. And then, yeah. So you see that in the layer segment, I just want to move this up a bit. 1 second, wait. Yeah, so when you see it in the layer segment that, yeah, you can see the hierarchy and you can check which element are which element's parent, basically. Parent is just the one that's like above. So you see that like group 39 has one less indent than group 3. So it's group 3 is a child of group 39. Yeah. Okay. So the purpose of this is that, for example, if I move it over here, right, and I use the properties bar on the right to align it. Sorry, wait, let me just move it down a bit so that it's a bit more obvious. Yeah, you see it aligns in relation to its parent, which is the group, and not the frame. You get what I mean? So yeah. So this is very helpful if you want to quickly align things to, let's say, for example, even this tag, right? If you want to align the text inside in relation to its to the shape that's supposed to be encompassing it, you can group these two together and then you can align it quickly. Yeah. Other than that, I want to point out some traits about Figma. You realize that your properties bar on the right is really meant for some kind of fine tuning, and almost every single visual functionality in your canvas over here. For example, I can change sizes here, but I can also change sizes over here, and I can change my corner radius here, and I also can change my corner radius here. for fine tuning. So I just want to point out that like yeah, this is the advantage of using Figma over something like Canva, in the sense that it allows for a lot of different kinds of interaction. And this is also like Figma as a software itself, as a product itself, this is where it's done well in terms of its UX. It's offered different ways of interacting with its core functionality. Yeah. So other than that, I also want to point out that in Figma, you can actually have multiple fills. So when you scroll down in your properties bar, right, when you go to fill, stroke effects, these kind of things, you realize that you need to actually add a fill. And this is how you create multiple overlaying sections of fill. So for example, you can have a image at the bottom, but you can also have, like, let's say, a rose tinted filter on top. So in Figma, a lot of your interaction with properties bar, it's kind of like it's very customizable in the sense that you can add and remove layers. So yeah, I just want you to take note of that in terms of like it's quite unique and you can't find it in any other software basically. Yeah. Okay, that's about it.
Yeah. So we do apologize if you guys were unable to like follow along with everything, because due to time constraints, we had to like speed up a bit. So one last thing I'd like to point out about Figma is there's actually this unique feature of Figma called auto layout. We didn't have time to cover it today. However, it's a really, really useful and unique feature, and something that you also wouldn't find in other tools like Canva or PowerPoint. And it just speeds stuff up a lot in terms of formatting different components. So yeah, that's just some food for thought that you can consider exploring more on your own. So before we end off for the day, we have certain tips that we like to cover just as a closing.
Yeah, so like Brayden said, we weren't able to cover everything today. So as a closing word, I think you can check out Figma documentation if you're interested to experiment more. Yeah, like I mentioned earlier on, you have Figma UI kit. So just now we covered the iOS UI design kit, but there's a lot of web design kits out there. There's also material design if you're doing Android app dev. Yeah. So lastly, for Figma, don't forget to apply for the student pack, because the base functionality is actually quite limited. It limits the amount of projects that you can create. So that's one. And the student pack is basically free. So yeah. You can also, oh yeah, the prototyping function was already covered. And yeah, you can also practice recreation of UI in popular apps in order to hone your skills and kind of like Figma speedrun. Yeah. Okay, so here are some resources. So for design inspiration, you can go to Dribble. Don't forget, there's like 3 Bs over there. And then there's also awards with 3 Ws. And this is for website designs. Dribble is a bit more for like each components across like most platforms. And you can Google, of course. Color palettes, like I mentioned earlier on, you can go to Coolers. For vectors and icons, so one thing to know about SF symbols is that if you're not doing iOS app development, I think by its license, you're not allowed to use it. So for more versatile icons, check out the Noun project and Icons 8. And also there are things like design languages that allow you to, for example, for Apple's design, right? You see all of its default apps like your photos library, your contacts, all of them have a specific design language that's already built in. And the advantage of complying to such a design language is that basically your users already know what icon means what. When you're an iOS user, you know that, like, for example, the sidebar icon might mean opening up a sidebar. But if you're like an Android user, you might not know that. So conforming to conventions helps your user experience a lot because it taps on prior knowledge that your user already has. Yeah, so these are the 3 design languages that are, I guess, like of the big tech companies. Yeah. And oh, we don't have time for this, but you can check out Can't Unsee Space if you want to just test your skills. It's quite fun. It's a short game to see if you can spot like UI UX mistakes. Yeah. So that's it.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.